Actually, one of the starting points was when we were in Balliol College and we came out of our little room and saw that there was an enormous Grace and Perry kind of self-portrait map.
Yeah, that's where the kind of idea really sort of stuck in because I think before then we were kind of literally tied up in the idea of threads. Because of there being so many intersecting threads between our lives, and also because I really loved the Mappamundi, and it did remind me of that.
Oh, yes, and we were talking about Mappamundi and your background in archaeology. And yeah, it just seemed to fit, didn't it? Some kind of
Yeah.
mapping. So you've actually got two professional symbols on your side of the Venn diagram or
I
map.
do. Yeah, so it's actually it's quite an interesting one because when this was made and when we were actually doing the main part of the project, the majority, so the little map of England at the bottom is the Genomics England logo. And at the time when we started doing this project, I worked almost exclusively with the Genomics England 100,000 Genomes Project data. And I was also a participant in that data, which was a kind of weird crossover to have as a researcher, knowing that I was in there somewhere.
And so
But
fascinating because we talk about that quite a bit in the article, don't we? It's just such an interesting perspective to have as a researcher, I think.
it is, and actually, I in December was inducted into the participant panel at Genomics England, which is a group of um, people who have disorders who have been recruited for those genetic disorders who are actually stored in Genomics England, who sort of give feedback and try to sort of understand patient perspectives and patient needs with respect to their plans and things that Genomics England are doing. It applies to sort of a broader scope of what Genomics England does, because obviously the Big Data Institute is it's so easy to see it as like a just giant box full of numbers, which, it sort of does look a bit like that.
And that's
Um,
what I felt like coming in. I was like, oh, I'm quite frightened.
yeah, it's all glass and computers and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so easy
Like,
to have.
how am I going to find my way in? Like my sort of touch point. And obviously, as soon as I met you, I was like, oh, it's going to be fine.
But it's
Um,
very easy to think, and even for researchers, it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that these strings of letters that you're seeing on your computer actually belong to a person with feelings and a life history and hopes and dreams. And so I've absolutely loved being part of Genomics England in all three factors that I've sort of linked in with them. And I think that's been captured really, really well here. And the fact, being at Oxford has allowed that because I work with some incredible people here who are so driven to make people's lives better.
and I
Yeah.
think that's been from the start, it was like sort of what I, in an ideal world, was hoping to find, but what I didn't necessarily expect to find was that sort of constant connection between data and individual. Yeah, I love that that it is so present, the connection between participant and data.
Which one's the most meaningful of your symbols?
So at the bottom, underneath my hair,
Mhm.
there's a little label 1010, it says. And that's from my hospital file when I had some of my biggest surgery. But also, it's present on my artwork that's featured in the zine as well, that's in the Wellcome collection. And it sort of points to a period in my life that was incredibly profound and difficult, and also a period in my life that was just a massive creative exploration and really joyful. So that's quite meaningful. And actually, all the symbols behind me relate to psychometric testing that I did as a career for 20 years and still do a little bit of. So that's pretty defining. Although it doesn't sound quite so emotional or personal, it's sort of been the background to my life for a long time. I'm really drawn to the red balloon that's just above your head, and that image relates to your early medical records. So where was that image from?
So that's on the patient record book. So you get a patient record handbook, so that you can carry a compiled miniature version of your medical notes with you for emergencies, from the Birmingham Children's Hospital. So that would be when I was 12, from my first cancer diagnosis. And it's still sitting on my desk at home. Yeah, it's like a snapshot in time. It's such an interesting thing, and it's got the sun on as well.
The sun
With
is just in the intersection between our two maps in our Venn diagram.
Yeah, so that's also on the front of the book, and it has a. I don't want to say it's not disturbing, but it's quite a jarring thing that you've got this lovely, bright, smiley sun on something that is a snapshot of what is ultimately a really horrible time. And so looking at the book, and I've got that lovely nostalgia of like the sunshine children's hospital stuff, but at the same time, the thing that that book represents is horrible.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's quite a profound thing.
And I think a lot of these symbols that we've used, but they contain multitudes, I guess is the way of saying it. They mean more than one thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that's certainly something that is probably the case with a lot of important imagery that people have in their lives. And I think that's been captured really beautifully here.